Hello and welcome to this special edition of The Last Tackle. We're here at the Totally Wicked Stadium because on Friday night this place will be rocking. It's St Helens versus the Wigan Warriors. 3 games left in the Betfred Super League. We'll be joined a little later in the show by St Helens head coach Paul Wellens. Carl, Amor and Kevin Brown alongside me. Carl, you know all about St Helens versus Wigan.
Yeah, no, look, we obviously spent 10 years at this club. We got to play in quite a few derbies as well, and Wigan haven't had it all their own way coming to this ground. I think it was 2018 the last time they won here, so plenty of motivation for them. But let me tell you, Mark, having lived in this town, I actually live in a village that splits the two towns really. So you just can't get away from it. Everywhere you go, wherever you go, you know the shop. Me and Kev even coach one of the local rugby teams as well, and Kev will tell you that there's just as many Saints fans as there are in Wigan, so you just can't get away from it, and that's what's great about it. It's fed into the kids right from a very early age, so it is part of the way of living in this part of the world.
I'll switch it around for you, Kev. How big is Wigan versus St Helens?
It's massive. It's probably one of the only things I miss from playing. I started in a derby and it was a baptism of fire, and every time when you get that feeling, it's great as a player or a fan or anything, but when you've actually sampled it yourself, you just want more of it. And I can't wait to come here and watch it with my lad on Friday. It's going to be a sensational game, and the beauty of it doesn't really matter who's picked. On the team sheet, if they're missing some players, the young lads step up, because like Kyle says, tonight we'll be training as kids and they'll be split and they'll want to play Saints versus Wigan and replicate their heroes. So if them young lads do come in for either side, I'm sure there'll be stars on the field on Friday. Yeah,
we've seen it so many times. Kev mentioned it there. Look, each team might have a couple of noticeable absentees, but it doesn't matter in this game. It really doesn't. Where you are in the season, your form. We've seen it so many times over the years. You think one team's got the upper hand and the other team just blows them away. It's all to play for. And again, I echo Kev. I don't really miss playing the game at all that much, but those days where you're walking out to a big crowd like that, knowing what it means for the next 7 days in this town, that is a feeling that you'd like to do again.
And of course we've got the Hull derby on Sunday as well. Look, both games have got a lot riding on them. Hull KR want to confirm that regular season trophy as well, and obviously you want to finish high as you can up the table, don't you? Because you want to be at home if possible.
Well, you do, and you want to get one over on your nearest and dearest. So the Hull KR one has got everything, hasn't it? The derby, that both sides are in decent form, but Hull KR at home, sold out, want to rub the noses of the black and whites in it and pretty much lift that trophy in front of them, because if they win at the weekend, barring a miracle of 100 points per game for someone like Wigan, they seal the fate, don't they? So it's going to be huge for them. But Hull FC on the counter, they'll want to go there.
Well, they've got to win, or it's probably the end of the playoffs.
Poopers, don't they? So there's so much for them to play for in terms of the league, but just to stand all over the celebration party is as much motivation for them as anything.
Right, we'll hear from Paul Wellens in a moment. We'll build up to the weekend's fixtures, but let's just have a quick look back. Thursday night at Lee versus Cats.
Yeah,
Lee are proper in the mix this year, I think.
They are, Mark, they are, but they keep reminding me that they're not, if that makes sense. When you think they're going good, then they have a little bump in the road, and I don't think their form's been too great at the moment. That win over Cass would have helped them as a group. Confidence, they're scoring plenty of points, but they've got to improve. They're a little bit like, in many ways, I think St Helens are actually showing a lot more improvement for this time of year. I think Lee need to now start to head really far north and really put the message out there once again that they are, because only going back 2 months ago, everybody would have thought that was the case, but I think they've just shown a little bit of a wobble.
Friday night, we'll talk about this game with Paul Wellens in a moment. Hull KR 12-8 versus St Helens. I tell you what, it was a good game to watch, that, wasn't it? It felt like a playoff.
It was a fantastic game, and do you know what? Saints are doing so much right. To go to Hull KR and make it really competitive to the last minute is incredible. I think Saints are just probably 5% off attack-wise. If they can get that right, for me, they'd be almost the favourites in the competition. They're just not quite there, but they've been building slowly, and I think over the next 3 weeks they'll be tinkering with their attack. Jack Wellsby, he'll have more game time in his legs. They're a real danger for everyone in this playoff competition.
But just on that, look, they lost Morgan Knowles, who is really the glue. He's the glue from the forwards to the backs. The other big problem I thought was, he has. He's been incredible. But the other big problem I thought that stood out really at the weekend was the lack of wingers. The wingers that they've been having. I don't quite think Tristan Saylor on the wing really works. I understand why he's there, but I think obviously getting Kyle Felt back, if he's back this week, it'll certainly be.
But what do you do with Tristan then?
Well, that's why I'm paid to do this job, Kevin. Because that is a massive conundrum. Look, St Helens were a free-flowing attack, weren't they? When Wellsby was out. Obviously, the coaches here have decided that Saylor onto the wing and putting Jacket. Look, it's a very difficult.
I think they were probably actually not relieved on Owen Dagnall or Carl Felt that they weren't playing, but relieved that there was a spot for Tristan Saylor to get in there.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on. Friday night. Well, I didn't see this coming. Warrington 12, Salford 25.
Wow. For me, Matt, I think that is the biggest win in Super League history.
I was delighted for Salford fans because
for
they're
everyone.
Going through all sorts of a moment.
Yeah, they deserve a bit of a time in the sun, don't they? They've done it. To say they've done it difficult's an understatement, but for me, that is the biggest win in Super League history. But for Warrington, it's such a hammer blow to any sort of, contingency. Where do they go from here now? They're out the playoffs. They've been beat by Salford, who have just been throwing young lads together. I think this is an all-time low for Warrington. And they probably need to just go, right, black mark through this season and let's go again from ground up.
Yeah, they did reach a Challenge Cup final.
They did.
It was a closely contested Challenge Cup final.
Well, they've
against Hull Carver.
Yeah, they've reached back-to-back Challenge Cup finals, haven't they? And not only that, I think they were the best defensive team last year as well. And but their performances, their attitude they're showing in games, I think it's going much deeper. Kev mentioned a line through this season. Wouldn't surprise me before the end of the year if there was a line through some coaching staff as well.
I say this everywhere. I just feel sorry for the Salford fans that don't know what's going on, and more uncertainty on Monday when we heard that Kurt Haggerty, who was going to take over next season, has resigned.
Yeah, it's a difficult time. Obviously, the players have all been picked apart. The roster's been. But what they've got is the heart's still there, and that's the fan base. I thought the fans were sensational. The fact that they turned up when they've been trounced every week, but then they get served up what they got served up is, I expect them to be out in numbers again. And as long as they'll keep doing their thing, the players will keep playing for them. Paul Wellens, what a fantastic job he's done in really difficult circumstances. So, yeah, it's still not really great for Salford at the moment, but performances like that definitely help.
Moving on to Saturday, I thought that was a big performance by Leeds.
Yeah, no.
Again, talking about clubs coming good at the right time.
I think Leeds are right now the most dangerous team in the competition. I think that how they dismantled and went after Hull KR was such a loud performance, wasn't it? They reminded me, Kev, of the Leeds of old. When they were throwing the ball around, and then they had Joel Moon coming back under, or Callum Watkins, and with Burrow Maguire, and they just made it so difficult as a middle. You couldn't switch off, and it was chaotic. And it looks like they've found the mojo again in that department. And let me tell you, it's so difficult to play against.
I always speak about balancing a team, and I think they've got the balance. Jake Connor fits that team because he's surrounded by pace. Ash Hanley, I think Lockie Miller's been sensational this year. But Jake Connor, for me, if he doesn't win Man of Steel now, I don't think he'll ever win it. I think he's been by far the best player in the competition. He's done it consistently. But the way Brad Arthur's got his troops playing individually to much better standards than they have done previously, but collectively they're absolutely
consistency.
They're humming at the right time.
Yeah, but also as well, you mentioned Jake Connor. He's been brilliant, and this is a guy that was left out of Sean Wayne's squad, wasn't it? That's another topic. Later on down the line, but for him, he's been probably the best player in the competition, hasn't he?
Right, very quickly we're hearing from Paul Wellens in a moment, but Wakefield, it's in their own hands to get in the playoffs.
Wakefield, another sensational victory. You know, when they score points, they remind me of the Castleville when Darryl was there with Zach Hardaker and Luke Gale.
Yep.
Great to watch. And do you know what? When you actually go there now to Bellevue, the stadium is brilliant as well. So what Matt Ellis has done, and the coaching staff and the players, I can't wait to see them in the playoffs. And I think they'll mix it up and fancy themselves to be a bit of a giant killer.
And finally, Wigan. Bit of pressure at Catalans, got through it.
Yeah, they got through it. Bevan French came to the fore in the second half. 3 try assists for him. Catalan were much more spirited in that, Mark. They went after Wigan a bit early doors, and I think Joe Tompkins was pleased with the physicality of it. However, where Catalan are and where Wigan are and where Wigan are going, the quality between them in the end was just too much.
Right, coming up next, we are going to hear from St Helens head coach Paul Wellens. But just a reminder, on Saturday, we've got 3 games live and exclusive. It's wheelchair action featuring some of the best players in the world.
The level has just been fantastic. And coming back in, my first season back's just been immense. Just seeing the level and calibre of the players and where it's come from 4 years ago is nuts. And it's going to be a really big spectacle. There's going to be 3 games going on the day, and they'll all be high impact, high respect, high speed, early IBs. Yeah, so it'll be a good one to watch.
3 cracking games, live and exclusive on the Sportsman. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by the St Helens head coach, Paul Wellens. Paul, thanks for joining us. First of all, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you, very good.
Let's just look back in the last 2 or 3 months. 3 months, just 2 defeats. You must be pleased. You're going in the right direction and now confirmed in the playoffs.
Yeah, very pleased. We had a game at the end of May at Hull KR where we did really drop our standards as a team and let ourselves down. And since that moment, we kind of drew a line in the sand as kind of what we want to be as a team. And we've laid some solid foundations there in the last few months. There's certainly still bits of our game that we need to improve on and get better if we want to be successful at the back end of the year. But the raw ingredients of what successful teams look like in terms of your work ethic and your endeavour, that's there in bucket loads at the moment.
I know there's 3 games left in the regular season and then in the playoffs, but how good is it to know that you're definitely in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, a bit different than last year that when it went right down to the wire, didn't it? But yeah, we're there. We've still obviously a bit of jeopardy in terms of where exactly we will finish, and still some valuable points up for grabs. Starting this week with a big game against Wigan, but we're in a pretty good spot at the moment. We just need to keep building.
Paul, how disappointing was it losing Morgan Knowles early in the game? Obviously, you've lost George as well. How's the rest of the squad shaped up this week for the big derby match?
Yeah, generally everybody's come through okay. From an injury perspective, obviously a few sore bodies given the nature of the physicality of the game. Obviously Morgan Knowles, you lose a player of that calibre is a huge loss for us because of his influence, not just with the ball but without the ball as well. And obviously George Delaney as well. He's only a young front rower, but he's had a huge impact on this team now for a while. So yeah, it's obviously big losses that we're going to have to look to offset.
And Kyle Felt, will Kyle Felt return, do you think, or is it too early to say?
No, there's a good chance Kyle will return. Like I say, obviously his was a HIA, so he's passed the standard protocol, so more than likely he'll come back into the team.
And just on that, Welly, you talked earlier about having attributes and things that you're happy with your game this time of year. One of the big notable things, though, that's crossed many people's lips is your sort of inability at the moment to score against these top 3 clubs. You're going to face Wigan, you're going to face Leeds as well before the end of the season. How are you going to go about making sure that in that department that you're coming away with tries? Yeah,
it's obviously areas of our game where we're looking to try and be a little bit more clinical at the time. And I think in recent weeks we played a game here against Castleford and Huddersfield, and we created a lot of opportunities and we scored some, but we also bombed a few. Mm-hmm. Now I think the big thing going towards games at the back end of the year is that you're not going to get 6, 7, 8, 9 opportunities. You might only get 2 or 3, and you've got to be nailing a couple. So that's a big improvement area for us. But also, being a bit more threatening. But what I will say as well is that the top teams generally are pretty hard to score against. We're pretty hard to score against at this moment in time, and that's the nature of the game, particularly at the back end of the year when you're approaching playoffs.
You're obviously disappointed with the result against Hull KR, but you must have been pleased with the intensity you played at, certainly in that first half. I mean, it felt like at times a playoff.
Yeah, it certainly did, and the game of reference when we were last at Hull KR in May, they really did put us under pressure, and we wilted under that pressure. That certainly wasn't the case at the weekend. We kept going after the game, and we were coming home really strong at the back end. So I view that as a real positive sign. But at the same time, there's certain things within the game where if we don't brush up in those areas, then we're going to find ourselves on the same end of the result. So that's a big focus for us moving forward.
You must have been pleased as well. You're really pushing at the end. You're putting the pressure on at the end. A few extra minutes.
Yeah, we
could
were.
Have been all level, golden point, or could have been kicking to win.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the game is small margins, isn't it? And obviously, I'm really proud of the fact that we stuck at it. We went to, I think it was 12-2, wasn't it? And we didn't give in. We kept going at the game. Obviously, got an all-important try with 4 or 5 minutes to go, and really did come home strong in the game. So there's a lot to be positive about. However, we've lost another game against tough opposition. So we've got to at some point take that next step.
I mentioned intensity. It goes up a notch, doesn't it, on Friday?
Wigan
here.
Yeah, it does. Obviously, these guys.
Guys know
only too well as well. There's you don't in these weeks. It's probably and I'm not so sure. I can't really speak for Matty Peet, but from a coaching perspective, there's not a lot to do. Obviously you want to keep things simple. Come up with a way that you want to play. Obviously, be diligent in terms of your preparation and what you're coming up against. But the teams need no motivation.
It's part of the job keeping them relaxed through the week and not being too emotional about such a big game.
Yeah, I think so. I think being involved in these games, as a player and as a coach, and many of them over the last 20 or so years, is that I've seen it done in so many different ways. You can choose to hype it up, you can choose to really just keep it low key, and sometimes you're successful one way, sometimes you're successful the other. I think it just all boils down to get the game won.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna, I am gonna hype it up because Mark mentioned Mark mentioned 2 losses inside 11. Given that what we just spoke about earlier about your challenges against the top 3 clubs, how big of a statement would it be for you, this club, those players, given where we are in the season, to get this job done on Friday?
No, there's no getting away from it. It'd be a massive win for us. We obviously the defeat last week hurt us in terms of our aspirations of finishing second in the table, but we certainly not give up on those. But to achieve that, we're certainly going to have to win this weekend. So there's a lot riding on it for us. There's no getting away from that. But I think that's something that when I look at the team at this moment in time, and they're embracing challenges, and they're excited about the opportunity at the weekend.
Are they excited about again? Many people this season, like last, they've written them off. Now a lot of noise has been made recently about them coming good again. Do the players listen to that well, or where are they at? Are they happy to be written off? Does it fuel them? Where are they at?
I think they're relaxed, they're enjoying each other's company, they're enjoying playing together. I think that's very evident. When you watch them play on a weekend, they're a confident team and believe that we can achieve something this year. But they're also understanding that we're going to need to make some improvements if we are to do that. So, I've got to tell you, as a team to work with, they're exceptional. And when they give you effort week in, week out like they do, and all you're having to talk about is a few little improvement areas, it's much better than probably where we've been going back a few months where you're questioning the effort of the team. That's certainly not the case anymore.
You must feel like you're going in the right direction. You look back at the last 3 months.
We're absolutely going in the right direction. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We've got some improvements to make, and the challenge for us is, can we make those improvements in quick enough time to be in the big games at the back end of the year? Only time will tell.
Right, I've got an obvious question for you fellas as well, but just for people watching who don't know, how big is St Helens versus Wigan?
For me personally, growing up in the town, it's probably all I've ever knew really in terms of sporting rivalries. And I am biased because I grew up in the town, but I lived 300 yards from Knowsley Road, and even when I was too young to be allowed to go to the games, I remember being in the back garden and hearing the crowd and hearing the noise and being so intrigued about what it was that was actually going on in that stadium. Obviously, I've found that out in a number of different ways in the years since. It's just an unbelievable rivalry to be a part of.
And how big a part can the crowd play on Friday night here?
Yeah, massive. They've been fantastic all year, home and away, and we're going to need their support on Friday night. And I know excited how both sets of supporters will be for this game of the weekend. And we're expecting it to be close to a full house, if not a full house by kick-off on Friday. And what doesn't excite you about that?
Well, Paul, thanks so much for giving up your time. Good luck for the rest of the season. Good luck on Friday night as well. But there's a huge derby as well, 3 o'clock Sunday in Hull. Yes, great to hear from Paul Wellens, but a huge game in the Betfred Super League on Sunday as well. Hull KR versus Hull.
Yeah, no, look, huge game. Hull KR, if Wigan were to lose here on Friday night, they of course can, they've waited so long for silverware. Well, they've got a real opportunity to get 2 in a row now, and that's something that they'll be excited about. But for the black and whites, they'd love to pour rain all over that, wouldn't they? And look, speaking of Hull FC as well, the games they've got coming up, if they can knock off Hull KR, they've got Warrington and they've got Catalans. So we talked about Wakefield earlier, but that's not. Yeah, absolutely.
They need snookers with Wakefield above them, but they are going for the playoffs.
They do, and it's just a huge game for both. I fully expect Hull KR though to get the job done. I don't think there's any stopping them for the League Leaders' Shield.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest place to go. The best occasions going to Hull KR. But when they're expectant, when they're playing against their arch enemies, Willie Peters for certain will have his troops bouncing. I think they're a little bit healthier as well than Hull FC. Hull FC personnel-wise have just lost some key individuals. But we mentioned it earlier about in a derby match, it often throws up some sensational performances by individuals you wouldn't expect. Hull FC are going to go there with not real much to lose, but a lot to gain. One being the playoff situation, but two, like pouring water over this party that they're going to celebrate is huge for Hull FC. So it's going to be a great game, and one I expect that's going to be physical. And that's one thing I reckon Willie Peters will be a bit worried about, the fact that even when they've won it, I think he'd be looking at getting Mikey Lewis off, because you can guarantee he'll be getting involved with someone in the black and white shirt.
I mean, how good has he been this season? I mean, he was certainly he was pivotal on Friday night against St Helens, wasn't he?
Oh no, he's been electric. We've watched him all season, haven't we? And he's right up there. He's one of the poster boys of the game, and rightly so. He gets under people's skin like all good halfbacks do, and even Kev used to do that when he played as well. And no, look, he's been brilliant, and such a variety of what he does as well. Whether it's his short kicking game, whether it's kicks for Tyrone May, high landing exactly where they need to be, or it's just his general running play. I
think he's developed now into a much more rounded halfback. He's not just a player that runs and creates for himself. Like Kyle says, he's a good teammate, and if he needs to play as a ball-playing 7, he can do that with his kicking game as well. And with some of the form, George Williams, the captain of England, playing for Warrington at the moment, if they carry on this way, Sean Wayne may start to think Mikey Lewis is his man to carry that burden of international rugby too.
Right, let's just quickly go through the other matches, and then we'll finish on the game here Friday night. Huddersfield Leeds.
Oh, look, it's just, you've got to be honest, this stage where we are, Huddersfield, they are up and down all over the place. They got a good win a couple of weeks ago against Warrington, and they backed that up with Wakefield taking to the cleaners. So it's a Leeds win all day for me.
Salford Catalan.
Yeah, well, before last week I say Catalan, get the win, but I fancy Salford to, kick on again. I think the fans will turn out. I think it'll be a very different atmosphere than usual at Salford, and one backs against the wall, a few players back. I think Salford win that game.
And this is a huge game if you live in the area. Castleford versus Wakefield.
Yeah. Again, I just see one side that's clearly much better in terms of quality on the pitch. Cass have just got to be so thankful that the situation that's happening at Salford has happened, because right from when the ball was kicked, you looked at their roster and there wasn't really too much in there that excited you really, and a lot of work to do for Castleford if they're going to come back and try and make some noise next season.
And Saturday we've got Warrington versus Leigh.
Well, Warrington needs to put a performance in for nothing else other than pride. It was embarrassing
For the home fans, don't they?
For the home fans, for themselves, for the families, for the coaching staff, for Simon and Stuart, who put a lot of money into that club. It's just not been good enough. It was pathetic on the weekend on Friday, and for me, I'll say it again, it was the worst defeat in Super League history. So Warrington need to, if nothing else, just put in effort and hard work, and if they do that, then they may come up with a result. But I think it's going to take a lot of soul searching to beat this Lee side, who, they're in good form, aren't they?
Let's finish with this cracker here on Friday night, St Helens versus Wigan. We heard from Paul Wellens. Look, Carl, you've been here when things have gone very, very well. Beginning of a season, wasn't going great. But, Paul Wellens, just 2 defeats in 3 months.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult place to work, is this town, because of the expectation that is put upon players, staff, the club, everything. But it's also a privilege as well, and I think that's how Paul Wellens sees it. He rides that. He's obviously learned an awful lot over his time as a coach, and it must be so difficult, Kev, for a young coach to take over from what he had to take over, and then be put under the pressure from, again, I live in the town, so I'm not for 1 minute saying that you don't hear everything and you hear frustrations and everything, but to be fair to Wello, he's stuck to it. He's believed in his systems. He's tried to bring his players through in his philosophy, and look, it could very well be in a couple of weeks that they may walk out at a grand final, and sport it's mental, really, Mark, how things can change in a week, 2 weeks. Exactly, so I just think that that Wello's now got a place where he's got a couple of bodies coming back in, and I think this game on Friday night, as we heard from him earlier on, it's huge, and it's a possible massive statement to send out just before the playoffs, and that's why it's so exciting. Of course, Wigan will come here
how do you see it? Come on, how do you see it?
I think, look, it's not going to surprise people, but I'm going for St Helens. I think Saints. If they get Kyle Felt back, and again, it sounds stupid what I'm about to say, but I think St Helens need this win more than Wigan at this moment in time, and for that reason, I think I'm going to go with my old team and think they get the job done.
Right then, bit of balance. How do you see Friday night?
Well, I can't disagree with a lot of stuff Kyle says, especially about the stuff where he says this might sound stupid. It came from Kyle, so no. But seriously, now I think in a derby match, I think the best defensive sides often come out on top. Saints, for me, have been incredible defensively. And coming into the back end of the season now, the defence gets more important because of the weather. My worry for Saints this week is they're coming up against an attack that's pretty unpredictable. When you've got Bevan and Jayfield and June and December, they can do stuff that you can't really replicate previously and in training. So defensively, if they're on like they have been all year, they give themselves a sensational chance. They just need to be a touch better with the ball. Yeah. If they're a touch better with the ball and Lee Briers can get this attack firing like we know they can, then I think Saints win. Do they win this weekend? I'm not too sure. I think if both teams play to the best, Wigan win. But I think Saints over the next couple of weeks when they get Morgan back, I think they're a very, very good chance for the grand final.
It's never the big players in these games that win you. It's always the little stuff that maybe fans don't recognise, but players and coaches, when they review it, they do. Turning up on small players, just taking your moments, like we heard, well, you're not going to get many opportunities. You have to be able to be clinical enough to take them. It won't be the big fancy players that picks and pulls this game apart. It'll be those little 1%.
One thing you can guarantee, though, off kick-off, Matty Lees is going to sprint down like it's an 100-metre race and launch himself at Liam Byrne or Tyler Dupree or someone like that, and that's enough to get the appetite going.
That's why we love rugby league, isn't it? Talking about a physical game, we've got 3 in the wheelchair on Saturday, live and exclusive here on the Sportsman. 12 o'clock, London Roosters versus the Halifax Panthers, Hull FC versus Wigan Warriors, and then Sheffield Eagles versus the Leeds Rhinos. 3 absolute crackers, live and exclusive on the Sportsman. Right, 3 games left in the regular season. It's hotting up nicely. How much are you looking forward to Friday night?
Oh, yeah, massive. Can't wait to be sat up there and calling the game, and it's going to be just so exciting, and yeah, just can't wait.
Biggest game of the season. Derby games, biggest weekend of the season, business end around the corner, full houses, lots to play for. We still don't know. There's jostling to be had. It's It's got everything. Can't wait.
All to play for. 3 regular season games, and then we have the playoffs, and then we have the grand final at Old Trafford in October. Enjoy your rugby league.